I always knew you'd flop, Ava. You're just not cut out for anything big. We took you in, fed you, raised you, and for what? You can't even get a normal job, let alone manage real success. That's what my mother told me on the day they kicked me out. And guess who joined in? My father. With his harsh snort and dismissive wave. Go on. Leave. See how far you get with your pipe dreams. Their eyes bore into me like I was a broken object they'd tried to fix for years, only to give up and throw away. I remember that moment so clearly, because it burned me like a hot iron pressed against my chest. I felt anger, shame, and a strange twinge of relief. I knew from that second on, I'd never return to their motel unless I could walk in with my head held high. And if it meant tearing apart all the doubts they'd piled on me, I was more than ready to do it. It didn't happen right away. In the beginning, I felt like a leaf drifting in the wind. After they kicked me out, I stuffed my clothes and a few books into a beat-up duffel bag, then took a bus to the closest city. I had $27 in my pocket, no job, and no real plan. But I had something powerful in my heart. A burning determination to prove to them, and maybe to myself, that I wasn't the failure they thought I was. My parents' motel was struggling, that much I knew. Even as a teen, I'd noticed how the no vacancy sign was almost never lit. At times, they'd talk about bills piling up. They got so desperate they even tried forcing me to clean rooms or answer the phone whenever I was home from school, just to save on staff costs. But as soon as I turned 18, they decided I was a waste of space. They said I was ungrateful because I questioned them about the motel's finances and had my own ideas about modernizing the place. Their old-school minds didn't want to hear any of it. So there I was, walking down a rundown street in a city I'd never visited, looking up at neon signs that hurt my eyes. I knew I needed a job, something stable enough to pay rent and keep me fed. Still, I was clueless. I wandered into a small diner. The manager there took one look at my sad face, then gave me a part-time job bussing tables. It wasn't much, but it kept me busy and off the streets. For a while, I slept in a cheap hostel. The room smelled like damp clothes, but it was better than nothing. Some nights, I lay awake on the thin mattress, replaying those ugly words from my parents. You're incapable. You're useless. You can't run anything, they'd said. My eyes would sting with tears, but I refused to let them fall. I told myself, I will fight. I will show them. I started saving. It was slow. The pay was barely enough to cover my bunk bed costs and cheap dinners. But I found side hustles. I discovered I was pretty good at designing flyers and simple logos on a borrowed laptop. I'd learned some basics in the motel office computer. People in the diner needed posters for local events, so I offered my skills. I'd charge them small amounts, but after a while, more folks noticed. A local band needed a website. A church needed designs for a fundraiser. Each project added a little more to the small stack of crumpled bills under my pillow. I was careful not to blow money on anything unnecessary. Then one day, I came across a coffee shop. It was tiny, with worn furniture and a flickering bulb at the front. But the owner had turned it into a warm, inviting place with homemade cookies and handcrafted latte art. It felt magical, even with all its imperfections. I got an idea. Maybe I could help other small businesses improve their branding, like put them on social media, design menus, handle little marketing campaigns. It made sense. I'd spent years at that motel desk, seeing how bland everything was, how behind the times they were. I knew I had an eye for fresh design and ways to attract customers. So I jumped in. I researched and taught myself more advanced online marketing strategies, watched free tutorial videos, and practiced for hours in the hostel lounge when the Wi-Fi was decent. Soon, I pitched the coffee shop owner on a marketing plan. Let's get you a proper website. Do a photo shoot of your best drinks. And post weekly on Instagram. We'll pay for targeted ads to get local coffee lovers in. He was hesitant, but he liked me. So he offered me a trial. Within a month, his following grew, and customers began sharing pictures on their own social pages. His sales went up, and word spread that I was the young marketing whiz behind it. Whiz was a stretch, but I wouldn't deny that hearing that made me beam with pride. Who was calling me incapable now? Work started coming my way faster than I expected. Little shops, boutiques, a few small restaurants. I was developing a local name. I got to the point where I could leave the diner job. I could finally move out of the hostel into a tiny apartment with a single window that rattled whenever the wind blew. But it was mine. And that first night I stood in the cramped kitchen. Tears hit my cheeks. For once, I felt like my future wasn't just a pipe dream. As my projects grew, I learned how to handle budgets, how to plan expansions, and how to talk to property owners about improvements. People who owned small hotels or inns sometimes asked for my help. I'd give them advice on modernizing their websites, or show them how to spice up the rooms with a fresh look and better marketing angles. While doing that, I started studying real estate in my spare time. I wanted to understand property values, mortgages, all the legal steps. Part of it was just curiosity, but mostly, something deeper was forming in my heart. I thought of my parents' run-down motel, how they never listened to new ideas, and how I could have saved that place if only they'd let me. I decided right then that if I ever had enough money, I'd buy a moteler, maybe a small inn, and turn it into something special. I could prove to them that what they said was wrong. About 3 years passed, and my reputation kept growing. I formed a tiny marketing agency with 2 people I trusted. Ellie was a friend from the diner who was super organized and great at finances. Sam was a web developer I'd met at the hostel. We took on projects for small businesses all around the region, from coffee shops to art galleries to bed and breakfasts. We helped them revitalize their image. We didn't make millions, but we made enough to expand bit by bit. Our deals got bigger. Eventually, we found we had the capital to invest in an actual property. Ellie was the one who spotted the listing on a real estate website. She rushed into the office one morning with this grin that sparkled. "Ava, you won't believe this," she said. "A small motel just went on the market for dirt cheap. The owners are behind on payments, and the bank wants to offload it." I felt a sudden rush in my veins, thinking, maybe this is it. So I asked for the details. At first, I felt goosebumps all over my arms because I recognized the property address. It was my parents' motel. My heart hammered in my chest. They had told me they were unstoppable. They had bragged about how they didn't need me. But now it was obvious they'd sunk so low. They had no choice but to put it up for sale. I could only guess how desperate they must have gotten. Their pride probably hurt worse than any physical pain. And oh, how I wanted to swoop in, show my face, say, "Surprise, you were wrong about me." But I had to be smart. I took a breath and read the listing carefully. The building was described as old, needing full renovations, and the land itself had potential. But the brand was basically worthless. They'd lost any returning customers and had horrible online reviews. My parents were nowhere mentioned on the listing. It was just the name of the real estate agency, so it looked like the bank had either foreclosed or was on the verge of it. I had a few seconds of moral tug-of-war. Part of me remembered the times, as a child. They'd tuck me into bed and say, "We love you, baby girl," with real warmth moments that softened me. But then I remembered how they kicked me out, called me incapable, and refused to even pick up my calls for months when I was struggling. They never apologized, never tried to fix anything. I decided, I'll buy it. I'll hide my identity behind an alias and see how they respond when they find out that the person turning their miserable old property into a shining star is the very daughter they once abandoned. We set up the purchase through an LLC under a name that didn't trace to me personally. Ellie knew how to handle that sort of paperwork, and Sam had a contact who managed property acquisitions in a discreet way. It was a dance of legal steps, but we pulled it off. Within 2 months, we finalized the sale. I felt a mix of excitement and dread. I pictured that battered sign out front, the bleak rooms with peeling wallpaper, the musty smell of the main office. But I also imagined bright renovations, new branding, a crisp modern style that would make travelers stop out of pure curiosity. Once it was ours, I stepped into the motel's cracked parking lot on a chilly morning, keys in hand. The place looked emptier than a deserted carnival. Weeds poked through the pavement. The sign flickered with only half the letters lit. The front office window had smudges. My footsteps echoed. I unlocked the door, hearing it creak open, and a rush of stale air hit me. Dust floated in the sunbeams. This was what my parents had chosen over their daughter. It looked so pitiful, I almost laughed. No wonder they were drowning in debt. They never adapted, never tried anything new. I breathed in. I can do this, I whispered. I'd spent years helping other people fix their businesses. This time, I'd do it for myself and for the final poetic justice. The first few weeks were insane. I had to coordinate a full remodel. Everything from the lobby to the bedrooms had to be either refurbished or replaced altogether. Plumbing issues popped up once we discovered corroded pipes. The roof had leaks. Some rooms had mold behind the walls. I got a crew of workers, determined but also overwhelmed by how much work was required. Each day, I'd stroll through the site wearing a dust mask, checking blueprints, choosing paint colors, deciding how to open up the lobby with bigger windows for natural light. Sam oversaw the digital rebranding, building a new website that teased a luxury boutique motel experience opening soon. Ellie handled finances, making sure we didn't blow the budget. It was stressful, but also thrilling. We were forging something fresh out of a place that had been left to rot. Sometimes, I felt a pang of old hurt. I'd stand in the hallway outside what used to be my tiny bedroom as a teen me. Parents had turned that extra space into a storage room for old linens. I'd remember my father's voice booming, "No daughter of mine questions my decisions." I'd recall how I once tried to show them an online guide about how to modernize a small motel, and they crumpled the pages, tossing them in the trash. Those memories fueled me. They gave me energy to keep going, even when I was bone-tired. Then came the day we changed the sign out front. A new design arrived on a truck, all shiny metal and sleek fonts. The motel would now be called the Radiant Haven. It was a name I loved because it felt welcoming and bright. The workers pulled down the old sign and tossed it into a dumpster, and I felt a strange kind of peace watch it vanish. The chipped old letters had spelled out my parents' last name. Now, it was my turn to shape the identity of this place. After that, we focused on the interior. New carpets, polished hardwood surfaces, updated fixtures in the bathrooms, big TVs, fluffy bedding, and small touches like potted plants in the hallways and local artwork on the walls. We tested everything, from the Wi-Fi speed to the lamp switches, wanting each guest to feel they were stepping into a cozy, high-quality retreat. By the time we neared our soft opening, the place looked nothing like the sorrowful shell it had been. We had a big front desk with friendly staff members, a manager who specialized in hospitality, a lounge area with free coffee and snacks, and a warm color scheme that made it feel more like a boutique hotel than a roadside motel. Our marketing plan used social media teasers, local news plugs, and partnerships with travel blogs. People got excited. They saw the transformation as a neat success story. Dying motel reborn as luxury gem. The phone started ringing with bookings even before we officially opened. That was when the rumors began to swirl among the local crowd. Folks wondered who had bought the place. My parents had apparently moved out of state, or so people thought. I wanted to see if they'd learned anything yet. But I figured with the big rebrand, they might not realize it was the same building. My parents were never the type to browse the web, anyway. They always got their news from secondhand gossip. And that gossip was about to blow up. On opening weekend, we celebrated with a small ribbon-cutting ceremony, inviting local business owners and a few loyal clients from my marketing agency who wanted to show support. The event was modest but warm, with a short speech by me under an alias publicly. I was not the owner. I was introduced as the agency's brand specialist. Ellie took the spotlight as the front-face owner, which was part of our plan to keep me hidden. We had some finger foods, tours of the new rooms, and champagne for everyone who wanted to toast the success. I walked around in a simple black dress, greeting people, feeling both proud and a bit stunned by how quickly it all happened. My mind kept racing back to that day I was kicked out. If my parents could see me now. A few days later, I got a phone call from an unknown number. At first, I let it go to voicemail. But then I got a text from the same number. "I'm back in town. Need to talk about the motel. Dad." My heart stopped. So they were back. Or at least my father was. He must have heard something about the Radiant Haven. My pulse raced, and my hands felt slick with sweat. A million thoughts scattered in my head. Should I ignore him? Should I call him? Should I reveal the truth? I couldn't figure out the best move. Finally, curiosity got the best of me. I texted back from a different phone number that I used for official business. I pretended to be one of the front desk staff. I wrote, "Hello. You've reached the Radiant Haven's business line. May I ask who is inquiring? And how we may help?" It felt sneaky, but I wanted to gauge his intentions. He replied quickly, saying, "I need to know who the owner is. I have matters to discuss. The old owners never gave us a chance to buy it back. This is urgent." So he had the nerve to act as if they'd been robbed of a chance? They were the ones who let it go to ruin in the first place. A wave of anger rolled through me, but I typed calmly, "I can share your request with management. We'll be in touch." Then I ended the conversation. I didn't want them to suspect me yet. I wanted to see what they'd do next. Sure enough, a day later, my father tried to reach out to Ellie. He must have found some contact details. He left her a message, saying he and my mother had unsettled matters. That was the phrase he used. The next morning, Ellie sat across from me in our small office, looking anxious. She said, "They claim they have a stake or are owed some type of compensation because that property used to be in their family." My stomach lurched. Compensation? For what? They'd sold the place. The bank had it. The bank sold it to us. End of story. I guess they were too proud to admit they lost it for good. So they spun some story that we had to make it right by letting them invest or claim a portion. That's not how it works, obviously. But they were always good at twisting reality. Ellie asked, "What do we do?" I took a breath, heart pounding. "Let's meet them in person, see what they have to say. But I'll be behind the scenes. I can't let them know it's me." Not yet. So we set up a meeting in the motel's new lounge after closing hours. I watched through a security camera feed in a back office, every nerve in my body on edge. They arrived together, shoulders tense. My father looked older, thinner than I remembered. My mother's hair had gone mostly gray, and she wore this forced smile that reminded me of the day she shoved me out of the house. They gazed around the lounge, obviously impressed by the brand new decor, but trying to hide it behind stiff expressions. Ellie approached, polite as ever, and asked what they wanted to discuss. My mother started in a tight voice. We used to own this place. We fell on hard times. The bank took it. We never got a fair shot to reclaim it. This place was built on our family's sweat. It's not right for some stranger to just come in and take over. My father jumped in. Yes, we believe the new owner owes us some courtesy or consideration. Perhaps a partnership agreement, a finder's fee, or the chance to buy a small share. We're open to options. Their tone was so self-important, it made my blood boil. I wanted to storm out of the back office and shout, "You never gave me courtesy or consideration. You told me I was worthless and told me to get lost," but I held back, biting my tongue so hard it nearly bled. Ellie, cool as a cucumber, gave a small shrug. "I'm afraid you'd need to talk directly to the owner, but as far as I understand, there's no legal obligation for that. The property was sold legally by the bank. Is there a reason you think the new owners would be interested in discussing a partnership?" My mother made a face that tried to look humble, but it came off stiff and desperate. "We have knowledge about how to run motels, how to deal with local codes, how to keep it afloat," she said. Oh, the irony given that they'd obviously failed. My father nodded, adding, "Yes, we have a lifetime of experience." Then they both started dropping lines about how they have connections in town and historical ties to this spot. Ellie leaned forward, smiling in a way I recognized as her nice but firm face. To be honest, the current ownership group has already redeveloped the property with a new brand. We've invested heavily in modern touches. We're quite comfortable with the way things are going. She paused, letting that sink in. As for your history here, I sympathize. But that was something to take up with the bank when you defaulted. It was a sharp line, and I almost cheered behind the screen. My mother's lips thinned. We wouldn't have defaulted if we'd had more time. Family emergencies forced us to step away. We're not incompetent. My father added, "We also believe the new owners might have gotten a suspiciously good deal. We want the chance to set things right." Their eyes flicked around, probably looking for hints about who was in charge. But Ellie just stayed calm, explaining we had no reason to meet their demands. She said we'd pass their message on, but not to hold their breath. They tried to push, raising their voices slightly. But we had security staff step in. They didn't cause a full scene, but they left with angry scowls. My father slammed the glass door on his way out. It reminded me of how he'd throw dishes when I was a kid, furious that dinner was cold or that the bills were too high. The only difference was, now I didn't have to fear him. This was my turf well, mine and my partner's, but truly mine in spirit. After they left, I felt a shaky mix of triumph and unease. I wanted to keep the upper hand, but part of me was afraid they'd try to find out more. Sure enough, the next morning, we got calls from local news stations. They said they'd heard rumors about a dispute with the original owners. I realized my parents had probably fed them the story, hoping to pressure us. I felt my old insecurities bubble up, that fear that I was still just a powerless daughter. But no, I was an adult, a business owner, with legal rights and a strong brand behind me. If they wanted a war, I could fight. My marketing background kicked in. We quickly posted a statement on our social media. The Radiant Haven was acquired legally. We respect local history and will continue to serve the community. We kept it polite but firm. Then we moved on. The next day, I came in and got a text from an unknown number. It said, "Ava, we know you're behind this. Stop hiding and meet us." My breath caught in my throat. How did they find out? Had someone recognized me? Maybe a local contractor or a staff member who used to know me. My parents must have recognized a small detail. Or maybe they guessed, remembering that I had always wanted to fix up the place. I texted them back from my personal phone for the first time in years. "You told me I was worthless. You told me to leave and never come back. Now you want me to listen? My hands were shaking as I hit send. Within seconds, the phone rang, my mother's name glowing on the screen. I answered, voice trembling. Yes? She let out a ragged sigh. We never said worthless. We were frustrated. We had money problems. Everything was tense. But we're still your parents. I clenched my teeth, thinking, you called me incapable. You said I'd fail. My father got on the line. Ava, it's your dad. Let's be reasonable. We raised you. Can we not come to some arrangement? You have the motel now, but I cut him off, fury bubbling in my chest. You disowned me. You mocked me. Now that you see I've succeeded, you want a piece of it? The line was quiet. Finally, my mother spoke, voice cold. Don't be ungrateful. We put clothes on your back. If it weren't for us, you wouldn't even know how motels operate. You owe us. That did it. The last thread of pity I felt for them snapped. Owe them? For all the tears I shed? For all the times they belittled me? I owe you nothing, I said, words quiet but shaking with anger. In fact, you owe me an apology, and until I hear it, you're not stepping foot in my building. I ended the call. The next few weeks were tense. They kept sending me messages. My father threatened legal action, which didn't scare me at all because I knew we'd done everything by the book. My mother tried guilt, sending me dramatic texts about how the motel was her legacy, and I was destroying the family name. But it wasn't her legacy. She let it crumble. I was the one who rebuilt it into something great. Meanwhile, the Radiant Haven thrived. We got glowing reviews. People called us a hidden gem. It felt like pure validation each time a guest wrote, "This place is so welcoming and modern. It's amazing to think it used to be some old roadside motel." The staff was proud, the rooms were filled, and the profits soared. Then, one sunny afternoon, my parents showed up in the lobby, ignoring the staff's attempts to block them. They caused a scene, demanding I come out and face them. I was actually in the back office, heart pounding, because I knew I had a choice. I could hide or I could show them exactly who I'd become. I thought about all the times I'd cowered when my father yelled. Not this time. So I marched out to the lobby, wearing a neat blouse and slacks, my hair pulled back in a simple ponytail. My mother turned to me, eyes wide. My father's face flushed red. It was the first time we'd stood face to face in years. The staff stood around, tense, ready to intervene. A few guests peered from the hallway, clearly startled by the shouting. The giant modern chandelier overhead cast its light on us, making it feel like a stage. "You want to talk?" I said, voice steady. "Let's talk outside. I don't want you upsetting my guests." I led them onto the front patio. They followed, taking in every fancy detail they never believed I could create. Once we were outside, away from the curious eyes of guests, I turned on my heel and stared them down. "What do you want?" I asked. My father opened and closed his mouth like a fish, looking around at the fresh flower pots, the bright sign, the newly paved lot. Then he said, "We need help." I blinked. "Help?" My mother bit her lip. "We lost our new place. We tried to run a small shop out of state. It failed. We're in debt. We can't afford rent. You have money now, and, well, we thought you could hire us here." Her voice wavered, but still had a trace of demand in it. She wasn't exactly begging, she was commanding me to fix her life. All the anger and hurt inside me churned. I thought they wanted a stake in the motel, but now it was worse. They wanted me to rescue them. They had never once admitted they were wrong for how they treated me. Still, some part of me that longed for a normal family was tempted to help them. But I remembered how they used me before, how they forced me to clean rooms with no pay, how they told me I was worthless, how they tossed me aside without a shred of guilt. I shook my head. "No, I'm not letting you two just step in here after all the times you called me incapable. My mother's eyes hardened. We did what we had to do. We taught you tough love. That's the reason you're strong enough to do this. Maybe you should be thanking us. My jaw nearly dropped. The nerve. The absolute gall. I lifted a hand. Stop. Don't twist this. You didn't do anything but push me away. I built this place from the ground up with my own team. You're not part of it. They tried again. My father leaning closer. Voice low with desperation. You owe us for all those years of caring for you when you were just a kid. We weren't perfect, but we gave you a roof and food. I swallowed a laugh that almost came out as a bitter cry. That's what parents are supposed to do. You don't get a gold medal for providing the bare minimum. And you don't earn the right to stomp on me. Then ask me to fix your mistakes. The tension in the air crackled. They realized, I think, that I wasn't their frightened little girl anymore. So, you're really turning us away? My mother asked, tears creeping into her voice. My heart twinged, but I nodded. Yes, because you cut me off when I needed you most. You want me to rescue you now that you need me? How do you not see the hypocrisy? They stared at me like I was an alien. I guess they never expected me to stand up for myself. My father's face twisted with anger, and he hissed, "Fine, we'll leave. But don't come crying to us when everything falls apart. This place might be shiny now, but you'll fail. You always do. That sting, that same old line." But instead of letting it wound me, I smiled calmly. I've been running it, and it's succeeding. Check our numbers. We're booked solid most nights. Our finances are stable. Maybe if you two had listened to me back then, you wouldn't be in this mess. Then, I walked back inside, leaving them standing on the patio. I heard my mother's voice call out my name, but I let the door close behind me. Later that evening, once I'd calmed down, I checked the security camera feed. They were long gone. I sat in my office, gazing around at the furniture I'd picked, the walls I'd painted, the pictures I'd hung. Everything in here had my personal stamp on it, and I felt a quiet sense of triumph. My parents had once told me I couldn't do anything right. Now, they'd basically tried to beg me for a way back into the motel. If that wasn't poetic justice, I didn't know what was. In the following days, I learned from some local contacts that my parents were crashing at a cheap motel outside of town, ironically not half as nice as this one. Word got around that they were telling sob stories about a daughter who stole their business. But people knew better. The old place was foreclosed. The new place was something else entirely my place. A part of me felt sorry for them, but only a small part. They made their choices. I made mine. As time went on, I continued refining the Radiant Haven, adding perks like a spa service and a small patio cafe. Travelers kept giving us 5-star reviews, praising the motel's ambiance and personal touch. My marketing agency also expanded, taking on more properties in different areas. Some nights, I'd sit on the motel roof under the stars and wonder if my parents would ever truly realize what they lost when they disowned me. I guess that's their journey. I'd done my part. Of course, they tried calling a few more times, always with some excuse. "We just want to talk. Let's make amends." But whenever we spoke, it would turn into them blaming me for not being loyal. I finally blocked their numbers, deciding that if they ever truly wanted to say sorry, they'd find a way to show it with actions. The revenge I'd taken was never about destroying them. It was about taking what they cast aside and transforming it into something remarkable. I didn't want them to suffer. I just wanted them to see that they were wrong about me, that I could do more than they ever imagined. Looking back at my journey from the day I stepped off that bus with barely any money, to buying and renovating this motel under an alias, I realize how strong I've become. My parents' insults once weighed me down. Now, they barely leave a bruise. Maybe that's the best revenge of all. Living a life so full of purpose that their words can't dent my self-esteem anymore. The Radiant Haven stands as a living proof that I'm not the fragile failure they claimed. I'm capable of real success, maybe far more capable than they'd ever be. And if they ever walk through those doors again, wanting to book a stay, well, they'll have to pay full price just like everyone else. No family discount, no free passes. Because I'm not the same timid daughter who used to beg for their approval. I'm the proud owner of this luxury hotspot, and my name might not be on the sign, but my spirit is in every corner. As far as I'm concerned, that's enough to erase every doubt they forced me to carry. I've built a life that doesn't revolve around their acceptance. I've formed a real family with my business partners and our wonderful team. A family that supports and respects me. When guests arrive, they feel the warmth and love we pour into the place. And if my parents ever want to see for themselves what I've accomplished, they know exactly where to find it. They can step through the polished glass doors, see the shining floors, breathe in the scent of success and fresh flowers in the lobby, and realize that their so-called incapable daughter did this all on her own. That knowledge, in the end, is the sweetest victory I'll ever taste.